Hello, animators and artists, and welcome to another Toon Boom interview. You might know our guest, Tony Ross, as Tony Teach. Tony is an animator and instructor who's worked with a number of clients, including the Atlanta College of Art, Creative Cow, and Lynda.com, as well as LinkedIn Learning. And he has also worked with us. So, Tony is here today to answer questions about his work, as well as his experience teaching our new remote training courses. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you so much for that intro, and thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
So Tony, how long have you been an instructor and what led you to the craft of animation?
I think I've been an instructor probably let's say at least 3 or 4 decades. I'm about to be 52, so I've been into teaching in arts ever since I was little, and uh, I think early on, like even in elementary school, I thought all of my art teachers were weird, and I felt, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be, an art teacher. And actually, the same thing, my love for animation started at early on, and I had a weird hiatus from animation because early on and very young, I understood that instead of just doing one drawing, it was 24 drawings for every second. And I was like, yeah, not for me. So I didn't get back into it until like after college. But once I understood, um, I got really heavily into it. So I really love animation a lot.
And as you gathered resources for the books and courses that you developed, has the way that you use Harmony changed?
Yeah, and this is going to sound almost like I'm trying to run for office, but I think my teaching, the way that I teach harmony, has actually changed uh, as the same way that harmony changes over time. There's little bits and pieces. Like I used to be heavily using like essentials or advanced a lot more because I the node view was terrifying for me. I was like, yeah, not really into that. And this is going to come across vain, but I kept thinking, if I could just find someone who teaches either the way that I do or in a way that I can understand it, how to use the node view. And once I did find that, I just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I still use some of the tricks I used to use with Essentials or like even Toon Boom Animate, but now it's kind of where I find it's almost like problem solving when someone says, "I don't get this," and I'm going, "Oh, cool. Let me show you how to get that and how to understand it." So that's how it actually shifts. And in the days of old, when I first was doing animation on the computer, it was when way back when a company called Macromedia that first came out with Flash. Um, I used to do animation a certain way, and once I started using any of the Toon Boom products, it's like I had to unlearn a lot of stuff that actually frees you to actually create instead of having to trick the program into doing something. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's I again, it sounds like I'm getting a what is it, a paid endorsement, but hear me out. It's like Toon Boom products have always felt to me like it's a program that's for animators, built by animators. Don't get me wrong. I know there's a lot of technical stuff like under the hood, but it just feels right. You're not having to rethink things.
So I know that you brought a rig with you to show off to our viewers. What can you tell us about Barry Angry?
Very angry. Well, one, the actual concept of him, I needed a character that could say things that I couldn't get away with. I am to be what is that? Completely transparent. I'm what, 6'4", almost 400 pounds, dark skinned African American male. So there's certain things that I can't say that people go like, oh, why are you so angry? It's like, huh. But if I have this cute character, he can say them. Like very angry, kind of sounds like a little bit like my impersonation of Harvey Firestein. So he'll say something like, I think it's ridiculous that you can go around here looking stupid and I can't smack you in the face with a brick, not even once. So it's that kind of thing. So I wanted him to have this. That was a sweet strawberry, but he literally has a bite out of him because he's bitter, and so like no one actually ate him. So it's just like this little angry kind of thing. So on top of that, I had to figure out. I had stopped drawing for the longest time, so I said I'm going to force myself to work on this character. Most of my drawings that are on Tony Teach are done by my colleague Chris Cartledge. And this one I was like, no, I'm not going to have Chris do any of this. I'm going to draw it. I'm going to rig it. I'm going to do all of these things. And so I worked on him like I kept going for, I said 30 days. For 30 days, I'm going to spend at least 30 minutes on this. So 30 minutes a day. So it ended up being way over that amount of time. But yeah, that's where he came about. And building him out. So he's this little rig. Let me see if I can show this one thing here. The fact I wanted him to be a very simple rig, but at the same time, he's kind of complex. Like I wanted it to be like if I were going to do a quote unquote series, could I do something work with this on my own? So it's just very basic, all these different curve deformers. But again, there's the way that his arms are set up, they're actually split in half. So I can do like little foreshortening and things like that. What like if his arm was to go in front or behind. Also, the concept of doing this so I could create memes or even T-shirts or stickers with this character, and animate with it. So it's just this little one-stop shopping.
Hmm. So you mentioned before that you found the node view to be intimidating when you were starting out with that tool. Was this rig made using the node view?
Yes, actually it was. It's like the let me see if I can show. See if I can show you this. Let's go over here. Whoops, wrong one. Let me pull up the node view real quick. Da, 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 da. So yeah, it was definitely created with the node view here. There it is. This is probably before I started using backdrops, but it's like, so yes, all of the. That's the one thing I learned the hard way after coming from so used to building out my characters on the timeline. If you're building it in the timeline, when you go to the node view, you've got a lot of cleaning up to do. So yes, he was built in using a node view. And it's one of the first time my first forays into just because it looks simple and in front doesn't mean it's going to be simple. But when I look at other characters that I've seen some of my colleagues put out, I go, this is still a pretty simple rig. And I wouldn't have thought that early on, but now I'm understanding a lot more. So.
Hmm. And what are some of the tools that you use to put this together?
Definitely I think I was definitely using the cutter, not cutter tool, the cutter node or the cutter filter, one of those, um, which that's one of the things that when kind of a segue here, a fun segue when I'm teaching, when I have to teach students about the cutter tool versus the cutter node, and it's like, or the cutter of thing. It's like, those are two totally different things. So, definitely using that. I loved using the brush tools, like for instance, just kind of having this look like almost like it's ink or something like that. Um, and outside of that, uh, definitely using a lot of the curve deformers. I think I have a couple of kinematic outputs even thrown in here. But yeah, those are some of the basic ones.
So the course that you're teaching for us is the Harmony Fundamentals course. What do you enjoy most about introducing artists to new tools like Harmony?
Honestly, I like my day one teaching, and it's usually where people have not mess with the program at all, or they might be either coming from other programs or just being a little bit shy. And I kind of get them. This is one of the teaching methods I do is get them animating or get them creating something for a wow moment within the first 30 to 45 minutes of the class. Just kind of like just drawing, like animating these simple dots moving across the screen. But for me, it's just getting them to do that little aha moment. Um, see if I can do this really quick. I'll say, all right, we're on one side of the screen here, and we'll start this dot on, let's say, the left side of the screen. I'm gonna hold this up. I'll say, draw this dot on the left side of the screen, and I'll say, great. On your keyboard, there's these less than and greater than keys. If you actually press that, I'll teach them where to turn on their onion skin. And I'll say, okay, cool. Let's like if we draw another dot a little bit further ahead. Let's go a little bit further. And I'll pretty much have them do this, and I'll talk about, okay, well, the closer the dots are together, slower it is. And if you want to speed it up, you spread it out. And maybe even it does like a full little line here, so it's growing really fast. And so I'll be teaching them this, and I'll say, okay, kind of just keep going, and you just need to get from one side to the other. That's all we're doing. Some little dots, nothing fancy. Don't we're trying to draw any wings or anything on that. And so they'll do that. It's like, okay, that's great. You know what? It needs a friend, and I'll have them make like another layer and teach them about adding colors. And it's like, I'll say, well, let's have it interact with that. And teaching them that little thing, it's like I didn't go in and say, well, here's a selection tool, or here's this, or oh, you got to worry about pegs, or you got to worry about the node view. It's like, nope, let's just do these dots. And doing that for me, it's one of my favorite go-tos because I've taught that to college students. I've taught that to parents of college students in about 30 minutes. And all of a sudden at the end of it, they're like, okay, cool, that's great. You've just done straight ahead animation, which is one of the more difficult types of animation to do, and you've done it in this program. And it's just that kind of little wow aha moment, and they're just like, I can do this. And so at that point, it's I don't know, it's just that cool little whether I'm teaching it live, whether I'm teaching it online, which is a little trickier than teaching live. You can still hear that little, yeah, I got this. Yeah, we can do this. Let's go. Um, and so, yeah, it's just that kind of thing. That's what I love about introducing it to them, because all of a sudden you're like, Harmony itself is, good grief, it's a powerhouse. Um, and you don't get to be a powerhouse without being intimidating. So my job and my joy, for lack of a better cheesy reference, is getting people to understand. Yes, this is powerful, but you can wield it, and yes, let's do some stuff with it.
And how did you first learn about Toon Boom, and what led you to try software like Harmony?
Um, okay, so funny story about that. Um, this was about, I want to say, a little over 10 years ago, maybe. And I remember looking at some of the software, and I think it was Animate. And I saw a demo of it, and I was blown away. And at the time, I was just kind of strictly using Flash. And I reached out to Tim and I said, "This looks really cool. I'd like to take a closer look at your software." And I'm expecting the typical, um, I don't know, web check, a person checks the web, whatever. But actually, one of the, I think the head of marketing at the time reached out to me, and we started a conversation. And so I started playing around with that, and the irony of, again, having coming from a Flash background, the cool part is when I have to teach anyone else how to use the software, I get to teach them about, here are the pitfalls you're going to run into and stuff like that. Um, see if I can share this with you. See if I can, give me 1 second. There's a weird connection between this and Very Angry. This was me doing a project, and I built out the different scenes, kind of playing around with this. But 30-30-15 was the concept of 30 minutes a day for 30 days is 15 hours. What could you do, start or finish in 15 hours? So just playing around with this character, and just putting all this, like knocking all these things out, using some of the tricks that I used to use in other programs, but at the same time, just having fun with this. And I say they're connected. It's connected to Barry because that's pretty much how I had to focus on Barry. It's like, oh, great, 30 minutes a day, I can do this. So, um, but yeah, this is done way back in 2012. So I'm going to revisit it soon and just kind of rebuild it out. But as I was saying earlier, I'm kind of it's kind of call me a digital hoarder or pack rat. Yes, I still have this program. It's like, still have this on my hard drive. So.
Yeah, no, I can relate. There's a reason why I don't put any icons on my desktop because my downloads are where all those go. Um, so you're teaching the Harmony Fundamentals remote training course with us. What
Mhm.
can artists learn by taking that course?
Oh, good grief. The coolest part about that is you are learning um not that's what's the word? Some of the most efficient ways of actually working, let me see, working with how layers, naming your layers, working with importing things, working with what's that thing I'm thinking about? Your brushes, the different tools like that. And yes, definitely, you still get to play around with the node view, like how to work with compositing. Um, Even like in some of the, and there's even some basic rigging that you go through. And it's one of those things where, again, it kind of eases you into it without being overly intimidating, if that makes any sense. Um, I think probably one of my favorite things that we got to do is kind of playing around with uh, seeing different rigs set them, like whether it's the rigging out an arm or there's this one character called like the Walker. So you're actually seeing how different people put things together, because not every piece is actually, there are all these little projects, but not everyone's actually done by the same artist. And you really get to see that thing of, I think Photoshop's similar where it's like there's 1,001 ways to do the exact same thing. Well, Harmony is kind of the same way, where one way to rig a leg for walking is, okay, we're going to use this from the top down. One way is going to be doing it from the bottom up. Are you going to be using any type of deformer? Like, how do you really start working with that? So there's a lot, but at the same time, it's done in a way. So again, it's not overwhelming. You before you realize it, you're like, wait, I actually know how to do that other thing. And it's kind of cool. I think I at least had one or two flubs. It's teaching when you're teaching, you have those. But the awesome thing about a flub when you're teaching this program is when you're going, well, why didn't that work? And one of your students goes, you forgot to do blah. And I'm going, yes, you remembered that. That's awesome. It's like, and thank you. I did that on purpose, sort of. So it's little fun things like that.
And in your view, who is that course for? Who's that ideal? Who's like the ideal student for that?
The ideal student, honestly, I think for the fundamentals one is it's one of two things. Either you are just getting into animation, or there are definitely some people who've actually may have done it more traditionally and want to take a look into that program. The other people, like if they've used other programs, because it is a different uh, it's a different learning set than, let's say, like Flash or Adobe Animate. Mainly, one of the things is the I would dare argue it's Harmony is kind of internet known for having a high steep learning curve. So for those people who are like, I tried to follow this and I didn't quite follow it, it's definitely for them. And I think it's just like if you're just getting into the program or if you're just trying to brush up, those are the main people. Definitely for college students. And if teachers are trying to actually show people the program, I think it's also pretty cool for them.
Hmm. Tony, what is your approach to teaching?
Ooh. um, Honestly, it varies. Um, my I think the one consistent thing I do is I try to do project based learning, but at the same time, I'm going to throw about two or three different things um, into one piece. For instance, even with the dots, what I'm normally what I don't tell them that I'm doing this at the time, but I'll come back and go, okay, we learned how to actually change the brush size using our keyboard shortcuts. We also learned how to work with our onion skin. We also learned naming layers. We also learned how to do all these different things. So to throw all of those things into one, I might say this: we're going to do this project. I'm not going to tell them what all they're going to learn, but I think, again, it's a way of approaching it. So you're not scaring the end user. Um, because, for instance, if I like, I think I've sat down and shown uh, some basic things to teachers, and there's no way I would show them, oh, by the way, here's what a peg is, or here's what a note is. It's like, I can show them that later. It's like right now, I just need to kind of go, yes, this is teachable. Yes, it's approachable. Um, so just kind of almost sneak them or trick them into learning before they realize it.
Yeah, when we were talking earlier, you're mentioning how you'd have students who would say, I was looking online and I was trying to find videos that I could follow along with, and I was looking at them and I got lost. And after taking your course, they felt that they knew how at least to start. They knew how to take other courses and apply what they've learned, and it gave them a framework for making other courses make sense for them.
Yeah. I was talking with a colleague of mine about that. The reason is, especially when you're teaching, if you're teaching, um, if you have only, no disrespect to anyone who just does tutorials and said puts them online. If you've never taught live, a lot of times you don't know where the pitfalls are. For instance, um, something simple as in Harmony, focus on mouse enter, like setting that preference, and then nudging things and making sure that you're moving an item forward on the Z axis. Okay, I know that when I first was using the program, I kept hitting this button combination 16 or 17 times, going, "Dude, why is that not working?" It's like I know that, and so now I go, "Hey," and some people, hey, "This isn't working." Okay, cool. Is your focus on mouse enter on? Okay, great. Are you using your transform tool? It's like knowing those different things. You have to know where those little pitfalls are, or even coming from, if I'm teaching someone that I know they are coming from Adobe Animate, then I have to make sure they understand this rectangle in the middle of your screen is not a stage. It is your camera. Um, and I know for a fact that the first 2 years, and it's embarrassing to say, I'll admit it though, first 2 years of working with Toon Boom products, and I kept keeping everything in this little area, not thinking, dude, this is a camera. I can go anywhere. And I was just like, oh, and I literally had to come up. I decided, I'm going to do a total product on, it's all about the camera. This camera is awesome. So just kind of doing things like that. And just getting, uh, just taking that approach where you know where the pitfalls are, and, oh, matter of fact, I don't know if my screen is still on, but I will see if I can. This is the funny thing that Marie Eve and I were laughing about is
Oh yeah.
where you go in when you first open up the program and you say, I'm going to make this, and so you, I think it's even longer than this, but you're going, your user interface wise, you're going all the way down. It's like, yes, I'm going to name this, I'm going to set this up, and you go all the way down, and you're expecting it to be like open or something like down here or something like that, but you have to go all the way back up to the top. And so I'm telling people, okay, you're going to make it. This is the mistake you're going to make, and I still make it. And it was cool because I was telling the class that on the first night, and Marie was sitting in. She goes, "I still did it." I said, "I know." We're like, and part of us is like, "Why is it still there?" Of course, if you guys moved it, we were like, "Why did you move it?" Uh, so, but little things like that, just knowing where to tell people things are weird. Um, the fact that and I pick on you guys about this, but the fact that again the what is it, the cutter tool versus the cutter node, and I go, there's other words in the dictionary.
Yeah.
It's like why are they called the same thing? I don't know. And so I have to kind of explain like there's little things like that you wouldn't necessarily know, um, and you wouldn't know to look for had you not taught in a live class, because a lot of times you're doing things from muscle memory and you don't even think about it. So um, here's a short version of that to answer that question. Almost anyone and everyone that has ever worked in computer graphics knows that Command C or Control C is copy, and Control V or Command V is paste. However, whenever I'm teaching, I still say that out loud. I'm not giving any preconceived notions over what you know or don't know. And so I try to do that, um, and assume that not that the person is like an idiot or something like that, but it's just like, no, you're just learning this. This is, I can't take for granted that you may or may not know certain things.
Yeah. I mean, every day is the day that somebody learns a new thing.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you have both experience teaching in person and teaching online. Um, what is your opinion on like the differences between either advantages, disadvantages, strengths, weaknesses of online training versus in-person training?
Um, In-person training, I typically, um, to be totally honest, I think I like better, and this is why. Um, having taught and worked in classrooms, I tell people I've taught 8 year olds, I've taught 80 year olds, and I even do it kind of as a joke. But I've learned to read people's faces, so I know um, about 2 seconds into where they're confused, and I even joke with some classes, but I'll go, "Hey, you okay? Everything good?" And I'll see them kind of move. And I said, "I don't want to make you paranoid, but I've been teaching for a while, so I can usually guess if there's a problem. Are you good? You good? Okay, cool. Let's keep going." So, not catching that online, especially the way I teach online, because I normally have I'll teach like a class, maybe up to 10 or 12 people, and so I have the mics off. So I'll have to do things like, okay, if we're getting ready to uh, work on masking, if everyone is with me, type in your chat window, type in mask. If you're not with me, tell me to repeat, please. And so I have to do little tricks like that. Um, and I think, like I said, my preference is definitely live, but I have learned how to survive, I guess, teaching online. And I've been teaching online even before. Actually, I've done some trainings with Toon Boom as well as with some other companies. Had been doing them long before our forced online training. So I've gotten used to that and started to develop some things. But yeah, little
Yeah.
tricky, but different.
In your experience, what types of skills and elements involved in harmony do artists tend to learn quickly? And what skills tend to take more time that maybe belong in more advanced courses?
Um, Honestly, it's not that it's tricky. It's kind of. there's it's not that it's hard. I think it's ingrained in them. We were talking earlier where like the first program you start doing things in. So when people start working with Harmony, I almost feel they are anxious to go, well, I did all my drawings over here in Illustrator or I did them in Photoshop. How do I bring those in? And I'm going, we'll talk about that. But what I need for you to do is learn how to draw in this program. So it's like, and so getting them to do that, which again, it's not difficult. It's more of their mindset. Um, so I would say using the drawing tools and actually creating things in there. And it's I've been teaching for a very long time, teaching digital media, and it was the same way when when I was teaching macromedia director or teaching macromedia flash. Students would come in and go, well, I made this in Photoshop. I was like, quit it. Get over here. Stay in this program. So get me to do that. That would be the hardest part, which is, again, it's not difficult. It's wonderful and it can get intense, but the very basic stuff is really easy. Um, the other thing is, I think as far as Harmony, it's the node view. But again, my trick for doing that is almost the way that I used to teach. What is it? The way we used to teach HTML. Um, if they built something out on in the timeline and stacking things with layers, it's like, okay, cool, you got that? Cool. Let's go over here and look at the node view and see how that's put together. Let's change this and watch them see like how very basic thing how that's done, and kind of again almost trip them up into see how easy that was. Like, hey, here's how we can change the layer order. See how that's working. Um, I don't normally talk that way, but it's like, but just kind of getting them, just kind of tripping up in there. So I think the easiest thing for them to get a hold of is probably playing around with the timeline thing, and then I kind of slide them over into the node view, which understand that the tricky part, and it's just especially working with people long term, is getting them comfortable drawing in the program. And I'm going, do you have any idea how powerful this program is? Like, get comfortable, and it's kind of that whole thing of because Harmony is such a one-stop shop. There's no longer, oh, well, I drew it over here, then I imported this, and then I needed particles, and so I did this, and then I wanted a camera, so I took it over here, and it's like, yeah, no, we're all over in one program here. So the more you stay in it, the more you get to learn.
Yeah, well, I like you mentioned that you sort of start people off with something that they feel is easy, layers. I know what layers are, and then you show them the node view, and you say, "Hey, the thing that this is connected to that."
Definitely.
Yeah, we think we've got some questions about your strawberry rig, so I definitely want to ask you some about those. Do you
Okay.
still have that up?
I can pull them back up. Let me go back over here.
Okay, yeah. So
Excuse me.
one of the questions that we have is, what inspires the creation of your characters? Where did this character come from?
um, well, and let's see. I consider myself a creative writer, so there's be these little things that I would come up with, saying things like, "Stop with the stupid. You've mastered it already." Um, and occasionally, if I was in a very bad mood, I started this whole thing of, I'm just going to start writing this stuff down. So I had, for the longest time, this long Google Doc of different things Barry would say. Um, and again, it's stuff that I couldn't say. Or actually, let me put it this way. In my youth, I would say them. And it would, somehow, it was like people were like, Tony's always angry about something. So I had to learn how to be a little more eloquent and just kind of, let me shift some of that somewhere else. Like, what is
Almost
it?
like an outlet.
Yes. Like saying something I said to someone, and I still love the line. I can't say it to people currently, but Your personality is like a Brillo pad on raw meat, but I admire that in a person. So it's like, you can't really say that. It's like, but Barry can. So that's where it's from. Um, the concept of what he looks like is a combination of kawaii, as well as 1940s, 1930s cartoons. Oh, and I must be totally honest. Um, I saw this character on Facebook, I think. It's called the Good Advice Cupcake. And I love that character. I was like, that is brilliant. I love that. And so that's what I'm kind of inspired that. Um, and I'm a sucker for naming things correctly. And um, excuse me, if you can, it's that whole little elevator pitch. If you can tell if you're on a bus with someone or in an elevator with someone and they say, "What is your domain name?" and you have no business cards, can you tell them what it is and they will remember it? AKA, I have TonyTeach.com. I've had it for years. So when coming up with characters, and I thought of the name Barry Angry, and I ran and I said, "Oh my gosh, the .com is available." Yes, that is his name. So that's where a lot of that comes from. Um, and having like a background in like logo design, graphic design, and all those different types of art. Usually, if I can't get the .com, I'm kind of like Monopoly and Park Place and Boardwalk. So if I can't get the .com, I usually change the name totally. But luckily, Barry was available, and so that's where it is. And then on top of that, we had to figure out. I was talking with my one of my buddies and colleagues, Mark Simon, and we're talking about developing things and figuring out um, do you develop it for is it for children or is it for adults? There's no such thing as necessarily developing for teens. So once we figured out that he is uh, adults, it's like, okay, cool. Then I can write for this. I know what the rules are. I don't have to make it kid safe. Um, Different things he will say or do. So.
Yeah, berryangry.com is definitely a lot better than strawberry skating fan at yahoo dot.
Yes, it's that one thing of like in it and today's it still feels neat to me even though my website is long overdue for redesigning. It's still kind of cool when people say what is my email and I can go, oh, it's Tony at TonyTeach.com, and it's kind of like not Tony's not number at so and so or at Gmail. It's like, well, no, it's this. So to be able to tell people that is kind of cool.
Yeah. One thing I see a lot of artists struggle with is they're really good at making things and creating characters. They're not always as good at selling the work that they do or describing themselves. So, what are some tips as an artist who markets themselves? How should artists think about their own brands and what they create?
Ooh, I like that. Oh, good grief. Now I'm going to answer it in two parts. My late mentor, Lou Hertz, my animation mentor, was telling us about animation, and he said you have to be able to tell the story in a single sentence, or it won't work. Um, Teenage geeks gets bitten by a spider, gets superpowers. It's like we already know what that is. Um, so I say, can you figure out whether it's yourself you're trying to market or the thing you're trying to market? Can you break it down into a single sentence? Um, and if you can't, rework that a little bit, um, or think about it more. Secondly, there is a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. He did something called Why, How, What. Um, and he broke it down, and it's an interesting lecture. I would suggest watching, there's a scaled down version of it, but there's also I think it's the full lecture is like maybe 18 minutes long, but it's a TED talk, Why, How, What. And he broke down how the Wright brothers, Martin Luther King Jr., and Apple computers all had the same things. And you're going, wait, what? And he explained um, you have to figure out what your why is. Um, and that alone, watching that made me rethink what is Tony teaches a brand. So, for instance, my why, how, what. It starts off with learning shouldn't be difficult. And why, how, what. It usually opens up with a statement. Now, my first statement is you're going to agree with what I'm saying or you're not. The people who are going to follow me or who are interested in what I'm doing are going to be agreeing with that statement. The first statement, learning shouldn't be difficult. Do you agree or disagree? Okay, cool. You now I got you in. And it's because when we learn, we begin to excel. Do you agree with that? Cool. Got you in more. And so um, working on like listening to that thing made me rewrite my why, how, what. Anytime I'm working with someone um, in working, like I've done a couple of explainer videos, I had them do the whole why, how, what, even the concept of 30, 30, 15 starts with the question, hey, remember that thing you said you're going to do, start? It's like, or finish, and it's like popping up, the images are popping up. Hey, I was going to learn how to play piano. I was going to learn how to draw. I totally put that off. It's like, and so once you get people into that, get them doing that. And I challenge people to figure that out with themselves. One, the simple thing is figure out what's that one sentence. What is it that you do, or what is it that your product does? And two, take a look at why, how, what, and see if that helps you rethink things a little bit.
We had a question in the chat, which is, do you ever have students that take longer to handle the software or learn a lesson? And how do you deal with that?
It depends. There's 9 times out of 10 when I'm teaching something, because I'll say, especially in an online environment, um, sometimes I'll catch it during the class, but I may also say, hey, if you're like in the class, you got any issues, go ahead and email me and say, I really didn't catch on to blah. Can you go over that again? Because sometimes people they definitely don't want to do it in a live setting. And a lot of times people feel like, oh man, I'm going to hold the class back. I don't want to say anything. So what I try to let people know is like, no, it's okay. And they'll freak out. I'm going, calm down. I've had at least 7 years playing with the software. You're just learning it. You're going to have questions. Email me. Even if it's like, dude, how do you turn on the computer? Okay, cool. It's a little like whatever it is. Don't feel intimidated. Just reach out, and that's the way I would normally handle it. Now, what will happen sometimes? It might be the same question, and then I'm going, ooh, let me approach this a different direction. Um, so it's just trying to figure out that one little uh, trick. Sometimes it's a visual thing if I'm teaching live, so I can kind of catch it. Um, but uh, as I as I was telling you earlier, and this is going to come across extremely vain, but I might not be the best artist. I might not be the best animator, but I'm a damn good teacher. And so I know what I can do. Um, and I've had cases where I've taught someone After Effects and the only thing they knew before that was Microsoft Word. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. I found, and the training people that I was doing, I I was like, I think it was the second or third day I was training the person. I went to the training office. I said, I get the feeling that they've only messed with Word before. And they said, oh, well, I think they did mention that. I said, you want to tell me that next time? But it's kind of interesting because they signed up later and learned Premiere from me. It would have made sense for them to learn Premiere first. But the fact that I actually got this person up to speed doing After Effects was like, yeah, I that's because it's like I have to find out where I can connect with them, what's going to make sense to them. Um, and in some cases, that's tricky because I'll start going, yeah, it's layers, just like in Photoshop, and you keep making that reference, and then you have people go, oh, I've never used Photoshop, and you go like, oh, okay. So then it's like PowerPoint. So it's like you're trying to figure out how to actually convey that.
Yeah.
You have to you meet them where they are, um, and it's kind of it's. I'm trying to answer it as well as I can. The short version is Um, Reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, did you have an issue with this?" And it might be, "Oh, let me show you this a different way, or explain it a different way." Um, and that's usually the way I approach that.
Hmm. What are some concepts that people who use computers a lot might take for granted?
Ooh. um, that computers, um, that computers and files can crash. They don't save often enough. Or, for instance, I don't know if you can still see my screen or not. It says very angry underscore 24. What that basically means is I'm working on this project. When I first sketch out or I'm working on it, okay, it's underscore one. All right, and I might push that as far as I can and go, oh, cool. I just added on the deformers for the arms. Okay, let's take that up to O3. And I keep going with that because if something goes terribly wrong with version 24, you know what? This file got corrupt. Let me open version 23. So I'm not having to start all the way over again. I think sometimes people will someone says, my file got corrupt. And my response, especially to animators, and I said, your file? You mean as in singular? Are you kidding me right now? It's like, it's that little thing of not only doing multiple versions of something, but also making sure you have backups of it. How many backups should you have? I don't know. How important is it to you? How quickly can you redo what you just had? Um, One of the biggest projects I ever have worked on to date was the project itself was about it wasn't an animation project, but it was just it was like about the budget that the client was paying us was 21K. And if we missed the deadline, we were charged $1,000 per day of the missed deadline. So we actually had my wife and I were working on this. She had a copy on her computer. I had a copy on my computer. We both had separate hard drives. We had copies on. We had copies on. We both were teaching at the same time, so we had copies across town at the college we were teaching at on different hard drives and things like that. And so every time we'd make a backup. It's like, okay, here's version 16. Where's version 16 here? Okay, we got the copy. Cool. And this was before like Dropbox and stuff like that. So it's like how important was it? It was very important. We didn't miss our deadline. We got it in early, but it's like, okay, how important, how many backups do you have? How important is it to you?
Are the
Um,
backups off-site, so if your house burns down, you still have
yes.
backups?
I had when I taught college, I was the professor that students usually would avoid. I had students come in and say, I dropped my zip disk in water. I said, that
Oh
is
no.
terrible. I feel so bad for you. So you dropped that and your backup in water as well. So, and I'm telling them, it's like, I'm training you for this. If you're going into this career, you can't go to your client and go, dude, my bad. I dropped it in the water, but I was working on it. You can still pay me, right? It doesn't work that way. So I think that's one of the major things that people forget about. It's like not just having a backup, how many backups, and then working in versions is extremely important.
I can still hear the click 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 of a failed zip drive, like embedded in there.
Yes.
For animators and artists who are dealing with corrupted files, if you send an email to us at desk@toonboom.com, sometimes we can recover them. So if you don't have a backup, there sometimes is a way to still salvage the file, which
Coolness.
is very helpful. We know that one of the things you don't want is to lose time. Um, so you're showing me before how your strawberry has Berry Angry has almost perspective on the way that his hands can go in front of his body and behind of his body. How early on in the process did you decide to have those poses in there?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it was kind of the poses that are here. They're testing out. I think because if you look, even on my palettes, this is Rage on test, and this is like exporting different poses he was doing for like a T-shirt idea. Um, but when it's kind of one of those when you're building out a character like this, it becomes this ridiculous rabbit hole. Um, so, for instance, the way, if I'm right, the way that there you are, the way that this arm is actually even built together, it's like there's overlay, and then there's like literally two different parts to it. Um, and as I was working on it, it was just like I wanted to do this, but I wanted to do this, and so just figuring out how in the world I'm going to pull that off. And it was okay, redesign how that's going to be put together. And so it wasn't that the pose came. Um, I think the pose came in, and then I realized, yeah, I've got to cut the arm. Just can't be in one part. It really has to be in two different pieces. And then on top of that, um, it's it's still one layer, but I'm just using art layers and just dividing them that way. And even more so, like if I look at the his body, for instance, little stuff like this, how that's actually put together. Um, the overlay. This is where that glare is. There's of course the line art. The color art, I'm actually doing another word shading thing here, just kind of acting like I'm an illustrator or something. And then the actual color is way beneath everything like this. So this is like all in one little thing. Is it the best way? It's my way. So it's like it kind of worked out playing around with that, especially because if I go in and take like this leaf, for instance, if I rotate it, well, stop that. If I rotate this particular leaf, um, the shadows that are here, it's like everything is very dynamic with respect to the glare. It's actually cutting that out and stuff like that. So it's kind of and it'll probably develop even more so because I'm fighting with myself now. Going, is he too complex looking? Should he look like more of like a doodle? Like, and I don't know. It's also a mental thing. Going, okay, am I purposely trying to rebuild this because I don't want to finish him? So it's like little fun stuff like that.
All right, so Tony, we are almost out of time. Where can our viewers see more of your work?
Probably the best place to catch me would probably be on my YouTube channel. Which is under Tony Teach, or it's under I'm Tony Teach. Um, Everything else right now is in transition, as I stated before, trying to get the site back up. But normally my YouTube channels are where I'll post most things. Sometimes when working on new characters and new projects, I'll do like a full webinar there.
All right. And I'd like to say thank you, Tony, and thank you to all of our animated viewers for joining us for this discussion with Tony Ross. If you want to get started and sign up for the Harmony Fundamentals course, you can find the course listings online at toonboom.com/training. Next week's interview is going to be with Matt Watts. He is a rigging artist who built the 2D characters for our training courses. Um, so Matt will be with us next Thursday to talk about what artists can learn from his rigs, as well as his role in productions. So you won't want to miss it. Until next time.
Thanks.